Hi, this is Friday, January 26th. And this is the left side, the opponents of kids playing video games. This is the Zoom recording of this class. I apologize, I'm at home. So it's a dreary day outside, so the colors are all washing me out, but we're just gonna do the best we can. I know many of you are not feeling well or were sick this month, so your schedule's all out of whack. But this was a pretty cool side to teach. I will say I was really surprised. Um, there wasn't more content available. If you look at, the documents, we're going to start with page 15 and go through page 22. So not as much content via articles, but the content I did find was pretty disturbing. Okay, so we're going to start with a video. Let me share the screen. Just a fun way to start class here.
The concept is pretty simple. Parents prank their kids by unplugging the child's video game console in the middle of gameplay, and the reactions are viral gold. Stop! Stop! No one likes to be forced to stop having fun, but something different is happening here. If you were to take away a child's books or Legos, you're not likely to get a reaction like this. So what's going on here? Why are these meltdowns so dramatic?
I've treated a number of children over years who struggle with problematic video game behaviors. I think one of the most important things to keep in mind is that the child will be able to tell you, I'm trying to not do this, but I can't stop. And I can't get myself to stop. I don't want to behave this way, but I'm struggling.
Why did you do that? That was my game into the Overwatch. According to Dr. Milham, these reactions aren't necessarily because of an addiction to gaming. Instead, what we witness in these videos are children who are victims of their own biology.
Being able to tolerate the feeling of frustration or that moment of sadness when you decide, I'm not going to continue doing this, that is crucial.
One of the reasons the children in these videos find it so hard to control themselves is because they don't yet have a fully developed prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex is a key component in the brain that's involved in helping us to control impulses and urges. When you have something like the video game being turned off suddenly, the child is faced with having to feel those negative emotions.
Another factor is dopamine, which is often referred to as the brain's pleasure chemical, because it's associated with feelings of euphoria, motivation, and concentration.
Dopamine is a key component of regulating reward mechanisms in the brain. The stimulation we receive from playing a video game impacts the same pathways that are present when one is becoming intoxicated with a substance. So it's no surprise that many of the behaviors and reactions that we see for a child who's struggling with having this sudden stop brought about in their video game playing, it has analogs to someone who is being asked to stop usage of a substance.
Let's say a child is about to eat a piece of candy. The anticipation of eating that candy gives the child a spike of dopamine. Then their parent yanks that candy away from them. That action will cause a drop in dopamine, which will upset the child. Video game designers have gotten remarkably adept at keeping gamers entranced with a steady source of intermittent rewards. More rewards means a constant stream of dopamine released into the brain throughout gameplay. So when a parent pulls the plug on a child's video game, there's an even more powerful effect.
Video games are inherently designed to be stimulating and exciting and to draw us in, and that to some degree is a healthy phenomenon. It's just that for some it's more difficult to control than for others. Is the video game somehow impairing their ability to function in the home, at school, or with other children? If we're not seeing any problematic behavior.
I'm going to stop there and I'm going to explain everything in your lead today came from that video. He is an expert from the Child Mind Institute, and he really sheds light on two important factors with the negative or harmful effects we're seeing with video games and kids. And it's really not just video games. it's your cell phone, it's your iPad, YouTube, whatever sets up this reward system. Because you're an adolescent and because of the effects it has on your brain, some kids can't stop. So I'm going to start with an anecdotal story. So you are on page 16 in the articles. We're going to start with Anthony Rosner of London, England, age 17. So this is an anecdotal story, and it's so effective because it can happen to any 17-year-old. He was a hero in the World of Warcraft online gaming community. He built empires, led raids, and submerged himself in a fantasy world that seemingly fulfilled his every need. Meanwhile, his real life was virtually non-existent. He neglected his homework, relationships, his health, and even his hygiene. In the words of Rosner, he said, "I never saw my real friends. I gained weight, became lazy, and spent nearly all my time slumped over my computer." So the most disturbing part of this story is Rosner played 18 hours a day, every day, for nearly 2 years. He almost threw away his freshman year at college in the pursuit of the game. Now, this isn't an ordinary story because he was a legend in the game of World of Warcraft. What he was able to do was extraordinary, which to me says he was brilliant, a really sharp kid. So what's going on? How on earth can you play a video game 18 hours straight, day after day after day, month after month after month for 2 years? That doesn't seem reasonable, right? It's extraordinary. So according to a study by the NPD Group, a global marketing research firm, his gaming obsession isn't unique. 9 out of 10 children play video games. That's 64 million kids, which would explain the huge volume of revenue in 2023. So researchers in China performed a study. They performed MRIs. If you know anything about an MRI image, they can do a whole image, a 3D image. They can, put half the brain, but they can see what is being activated in different parts of the brain. And they studied the brains of 18 college students who spent 10 hours or more per day playing games like World of Warcraft. And they compared their MRIs to kids who less than 2 hours a day. And what they found was astonishing. There was less gray matter. That means the thinking part of the brain had diminished. So as far back as the 1990s, scientists have warned that video games only stimulate certain parts of the brain. Remember last week I told you in the proponent side, they can be educational. They can teach, visual learning, spatial skills, fine motor skills, and that is all true. But there's something that it's doing negatively to this part of the brain, the prefrontal cortex. So a study published in the scientific journal Nature in 1998 showed playing video games releases another component to this equation, dopamine. Well, okay, so does the lollipop you saw in the video. So does me running. Anything that gives you joy is going to release a natural hormone called dopamine. It's awesome. It keeps us from getting depressed. It's your body's natural way of making you happy. However, the amount of dopamine released in a video game is what's problematic. It is equivalent to an IV injection of amphetamine, and that's a stimulant like meth, right? Which would account for the supposed addictive component because video gaming disorder is now classified as an addiction. According to David Greenfield, PhD, playing video games floods the pleasure center of the brain with dopamine. The gamers get such a rush, but the rush, this flooding, is temporary. The end result means their brain says, oh, there's too much, I'm going to stop producing dopamine. Okay, that's like you don't get your candy. That's like a diabetic who produces insulin naturally and can't stop producing it anymore. It can be deadly. This is going to cause you to fluctuate in mood. You're going to crash, anxiety, depression. What do you think it did to poor Rosner's sleep? Because if you're playing 18 hours a day, you're sleeping 6 hours. So here's what's going on. Rosner was 17 years old. And here's what we know about a 17-year-old's prefrontal cortex. It's a powerful draw, a video game, for this part of the brain that's already underdeveloped. So video games are designed with a reward structure that's unpredictable. So attention to the game, knowing you might score, maybe you'll, rise to another level. It's the same reward structure as a casino or a slot machine. So a player will keep playing. But the prefrontal cortex, which is your locus of judgment, decision-making, and impulse control, undergoes, I'm sorry, I'm going to sneeze. Sorry. Major reorganization during adolescence. And this is according to Tom Ahammer, PhD, assistant research professor in the Department of Psychiatry. Sorry, I'm a little tired today. At Indiana University School of Medicine. This is the executive control center for all your decision making. It weighs your risks. Should I do my schoolwork? Should I play the video game? Young adult males who played a violent video game were shown extensively for 2 weeks, had lower activity in important brain areas which control behavior compared to those who played no video games. Okay, so this prefrontal cortex of your brain is why some teens make poor decisions, right? Kids in their teenage years probably are the most reckless. This is why teenage drivers are the highest to insure, because they have higher accidents and fatalities in cars than any other age group. And right about 25, your insurance rates go down because kids make foolish decisions on the road. They assess risks and take too many risks, whereas an adult with a fully developed prefrontal cortex wouldn't take those risks in the first place. So what's going on here? Young people are more likely to engage, like Rosner, in hours of play, ignoring food, sleep, and hygiene, which is exactly what happened to him. So they're less able to weigh the negative consequences and the harmful behavior of excessive gaming because of the impact on the frontal lobe development. So in a study of 45 adolescents playing violent video games, just 30 minutes, it immediately lowered activity in the prefrontal cortex of the brain compared to those who were in a nonviolent game. Okay, so we know it's impacting the prefrontal cortex. The dopamine release that comes from gaming, besides this, so you've got the prefrontal cortex underdeveloped. Let's throw that in with this flood of dopamine, which is so powerful, it can shut down the prefrontal cortex. And you've got someone like Rosner playing 18 hours a day straight. According to Dr. Greenfield, he's not alone. Kids can plop themselves down in front of a computer, just like this. You all hearing me, 8, 10, 25, 36 hours. So it's not just a video game, ladies and gentlemen. It's YouTube, it's TikTok on your phone. Anthony Roser played World of Warcraft up to 18 hours a day for 2 years. He became one of the top players in the game. Tens of thousands of players were under him. He became a virtual god. So you can see why it was the perfect storm of a situation. In his words, he said, I created a blood elf paladin called Severin, set up my own guild, the QT Yacht Club, and treated it like a full-time job, maintaining the website, recruiting new players, and organizing and leading raids. He said, people I didn't know would message me and tell me how amazing I was. It was the complete opposite of what I had in real life. So you can see why I told you at the beginning of this video, he had to be really smart. I mean, wow. Okay, so I know you probably have a lot of questions. Where were his parents and all this? What was going on? Clearly he got into college because the rest of the story kind of explains all of this came to a head his freshman year of college. Of course, mom and dad aren't monitoring him. He can play 24/7. They would be none the wiser. So he's flunking out of his first freshman year of college, and he is an aspiring filmmaker. And he is throwing it away, playing his video game. His grades suffered. He missed assignments. His academic advisor, I think, gave him a lot of grace, gave him two options. Complete all your essays for the entire year in 3 weeks, which you got to be smart to be able to do that, or you're going to fail and you're going to have to retake your freshman year. He says, I didn't want to let myself or my parents down, so I uninstalled World of Warcraft, and he got to work. That says a lot about him right there too. After turning away from the game, Rosner found other sources of joy. He joined a gym, started DJing, he became more active socially, and he realized he couldn't believe what he was missing out on. So you have another link to the roster, to this aside today for his documentary. He did create a film, and it chronicled his adventures with Severin and World of Warcraft and his addiction and how he broke free from gaming. It has saved a lot of lives, I think. He's more than 1 million people worldwide have viewed his film. You can see it on YouTube. I gave you the link. It has been featured at film festivals, on TV, in newspapers, and magazine. He said, people still ask me about my character, Severin, but I've realized it's far more rewarding to achieve my potential in real life. Okay, so I'm going to share the screen here. And go to my, nope. Oh, I thought I did it, but I didn't. Okay, let me go to the outline. There we go. Okay, so as you can see, the lead comes from the video. Children who play video games often admit they want to be able to control themselves when it comes to excessive play. But what you saw in the video and what most kids feel is a lack of self-control. And according to Dr. Michael Milham, Vice President of Research from the Child Mind Institute, who treats children labeled as having techno tantrums, even when parents turn off or enforce rules, he says these children are not necessarily addicted. Instead, they're victims of their own biology. Children melt down when told to stop playing their favorite video game as a result of their underdeveloped brain, the prefrontal cortex, and the natural hormone dopamine, which is released in such huge amounts during the game. The dopamine, of course, is then shut off, which is like eating a piece of candy and then having it taken out of their hands. The way the video games are designed stimulate dopamine in higher doses, making it difficult to stop. Okay, so he suggests video games are not always harmful, which we learned week 1, which supports the proponent sides. They can affect different parts of the brain. They can be educational, then they can help with critical and creative thinking. But the strong argument we're going to talk to about today is video games can be addictive because of the biology in an adolescent. So you'll notice number 1, this is that information, the China MRI. David Greenfield's going to talk about the prefrontal cortex and dopamine. And then number 3, I'm going to mention, obviously, World of Warcraft and the anecdotal story with Anthony Rosner. So I will tell you this, everybody. I'm going to go back to my articles here. Let's stop share. I think that it's fascinating. The anecdotal story, I probably got your attention with that. I didn't focus on that more than a third body paragraph, but you could, write your body paragraph predominantly about Anthony Rosner, really know his story, and maybe talk about what's going on in his brain, like all adolescents his age, and why he could do that 18 hours a day, day after day after day for 2 years straight. And then we're going to talk about really just kind of something really interesting and fun. I'm on page 20. Obviously, there are health effects to gaming. And let's just go with Anthony Rosner here for a second. He's not sleeping. It's 6 hours a day. So I want you to think about what that was doing to him physically. Obviously, he's not exercising. He said he was overweight. An interesting study, and this is on page 21 from the Journal of Clinical Nutrition, has found a single session of video game play in healthy adolescents is associated with an increased food intake. Okay, so not only is he not exercising, he's eating more. And there's two reasons why, and I've kind of explained that, and you can read that in the article. But I think what's fascinating here too is I think his judgment was impaired. He's only sleeping 6 hours. What kind of food do you think he was eating? I'm going to guess junk food. You with me? So yeah, I'm pretty sure he looked bad. Okay, so here's what we know. He's not getting enough sleep. You're looking at a screen for 18 hours a day. He was probably had vision issues, poor concentration, headache. Obviously, it's associated with insomnia. He's only getting 6 hours of sleep. So scientists are saying what it probably did, the consistent lack of sleep because of the gaming, his natural circadian rhythm was disrupted. We know that a lack of sleep, insomnia, is associated with anxiety, depression, and mood disorders. So I would imagine he was a pretty unhappy guy. Yeah. I don't imagine that was when he finally was able to stop, he realized, wow. The other thing I want to talk about that's fascinating, the health effects of too much gaming is, oh my gosh. So there are gaming injuries, everybody. So I don't know if you know, carpal tunnel syndrome is from typing. Okay. And it's inflammation and pain in the wrists. And I know people who've had surgery. It's debilitating. Okay. Well, I'm older. Your parents are older. Us having carpal tunnel syndrome, no one would think twice about it. A 16-year-old, 17-year-old having carpal tunnel syndrome, you're playing way too much. The other one is gamer's thumb, also called PlayStation thumb or Nintendo-nitis. The actual technical medical term is de Quervain's tenosynovitis, swelling and limited movement of your thumb, kind of stuck. The other one, this is the most disturbing, your hands, think about your controller, right? Trigger finger or stenosing tenosynovitis, fingers get stuck in the bent position due to chronic inflammation. That's like an older person in arthritis. So that's nuts. Tendonitis, which is tennis elbow. Kids are having links with that. So our second body paragraph, besides video games being associated with addiction, there are physical and mental health ailments as a direct result of excessive play. That's crazy. So body number one is really talking about these hand injuries. Number two is going to talk about just the physical, the eating, the lack of exercise, insomnia, and what that's going to do to sleep, what that's going to do to mood and anxiety and depression. And then we're going to end with, which is what I really thought I was going to find the most information on, was not what I found the most information on. Was the concern is when kids play violent games, they become more violent or antisocial in behavior. And there was not as much documented proof on that as I thought there would be. There was more documented proof about how it affects the brain so negatively and the prefrontal cortex. So there has been concern. And I think what's happening is kids who watch violent games, it's kind of like watching mature content on the internet. It becomes commonplace. You're desensitized to it. And then when kids develop emotional problems, they link it to a lot of different things, not just video games. But there are a couple studies I found. One was a 7-year international study observing 17,000 children, adolescents between the ages of 9 and 19. And they found playing violent video games led to an increased physical aggression over time. So became a mode of behavior. Another combined study from the US, Canada, Germany, and Japan found those who played violent games, specifically Grand Theft Auto, Call of Duty, or Manhunt, were more likely to exhibit violent behavior, such as being sent to the principal's office or fighting or hitting a non-family member, which we can all agree is not normal. Dartmouth researchers recently completed a meta-analysis and determined those in the study who played video games frequently or infrequently, this is concerning, had an increased risk of aggressive behavior. So what I did find, it wasn't just violence or antisocial behaviors, it was more of, they were more likely to be involved with riskier behaviors. And we know that teenagers have risky behaviors anyway. You know, why would you want to vape? Why would you want to text and drive? Yet this is what teenagers do. And kids who play violent games have a tendency towards those riskier behaviors or committing acts of violence. Okay, so I'm going to end with, I'm going to share the screen one more time. We're going to end with our conclusion. So when it comes to excessive play with video games, credible experts and research findings support the fact that these games can be physically and mentally harmful for an underdeveloped adolescent brain, which means parents should be concerned their child could become addicted. So when it comes to allowing kids to play video games, parents should be aware of their child's biological limitations, know their child will likely be unable to show self-control. So what can you do? You know, you take the game away, you take the system away. Or you set boundaries, limit their play, recognizing that a child cannot learn self-control unless they're shown how to do so by a parent. So even though boys tend to engage more video game play and technology device could cause a techno tantrum, I don't think it's just video games here. Look at the way females at school struggle with putting down their phones. Imagine a female reaction if her phone was stolen. I think it would be just like the techno tantrum you saw in the boys in the video. Consider how all teenage drivers put their lives and other drivers at risk on the road when they receive a text. The same underdeveloped prefrontal cortex in a teen's brain causes them to make riskier decisions, which is similar to what happens with video game play. So I do think it's the perfect storm. It is, you know, you have a video game that sets up all the rewards your brain wants and feeds this cycle, and your underdeveloped brain and all these hits of dopamine cause a child to lose control, which can look like an addiction. And it is at that point. So these are obviously extreme. So I think the takeaway here is moderation in anything. But, you know, just want to leave you with this. The average high school student is on their computer 8 to 10 hours a day. Are you on it because you're really doing work the whole time, or are you on it because you can't stop? Is it your prefrontal cortex? And you don't have the capacity to show self-control or weigh the risks? Is it the dopamine hit that you're getting when you switch over and go shopping or to YouTube or go onto your text board, message board, or social media while you're doing homework in between? You know, what's feeding that cycle? Do you really have to be on your computer 8 to 10 hours a day? I guess that's my question. So it just makes you pause and think. It's not just video games, it's the reward system in all technology. Okay, thanks for watching. And if you missed class, a lot of kids did for whatever reason, January's get back to school, a lot of sickness, please get back to class. All right, I missed you and I hope to see you soon. Thank you for watching. Have a great day.